If a stepmother wants to help you out, you may have some trepidations and some serious doubts. She has but one concern. What can she do for you? But here's one thing she must ask of you: to sit in the front room and just yell at you while making a bunch of messes for you. Sit in the front room, driving you to craziness, and just what will ever you do? The Front Room is from A24 and writer-director Mike and Sam Eggers, the less talented of the Eggers clan. So Mike wrote The Lighthouse. It actually was pretty good. Weird, but pretty goddamn good. And Sam, who also made The Pants Too Long, also did a film called Olympia. Check out the respective IMDb pages to see what they've been up to. Brandy, Moesha herself, the star of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, and The Boy Is Mine. Yes, with Monica, it's just one of them days that a girl goes through. I sound so like saying this. And the one that did Sitting Up in My Room, that really, if you break down the lyrics, was a pretty gross song that we all bop to. I bop to, as much as a white person can bop to anything. That being said, Brandy has apparently not aged in the last 25 goddamn years. No, seriously, she actually looks exactly the same as she did when I Still Know What You Did Last Summer came out. Who remembers Moesha? Was Moesha a favorite show of yours? I'm just going to talk about random stuff because the Front Room doesn't really have a lot of material to dive into. You do have Andrew Burnup, who played Norman, I told you to stop bothering the guests, and this was based on a short story by Susan. Attention swimmers, we've got Mission Hill. No, it's actually Susan Hill, but I just felt like throwing the Adult Swim thing in there. And boy, you can definitely tell this was a short story. Because not only was it endlessly padded with stuff that didn't actually fucking factor into the story, not only did they carve and hack and just fillet pieces off movies like Rosemary's Baby and really any other religious connotation-based horror movie, and just had that A24 style that they completely shat on and then said, A24, please distribute it. You'll make money, we promise. We're the Eggers brothers. We actually know somebody that made a good film for you, but that being said, let's just move on for this. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Catherine Hunter plays Solange. No, not that Solange. She is a very, very over-the-top, elderly, practically racist old hag that is walking around that kind of talks like Meatwad. For those of you who have seen it, you won't be able to unhear it. And if you haven't seen it and you're just waiting until the spoilers, now you won't be able to unhear it when you see it. She sounds like fucking Meatwad. Catherine Hunter, by the way, I have nothing against her as a person. You could argue that this performance was so goddamn over the top, it was almost fucking comedic. Except it's supposed to be a comedy, even a dark comedy, it didn't work. If it's supposed to be a horror, it didn't work. The trailer actually made it look like it might be at least a bit of a fun time. You know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of Hush. It reminded me a lot of those isolation horror movies, suspense movies, where you're not actually sure if the third party is trying anything, nefarious, or if this is all in the head of the respective wife or husband. So basically, Solange is the stepmother of Norman. And Norman thought that she was a very, very cruel mother. A cruel, cruel, cruel mother, just making him watch shit on his own. A cruel, cruel, cruel stepmother. And she wasn't the only one. But Norman being very attached and wanting to get away from his mother at the same time. Part of him being split. Gee, I wonder what movie they got that from. It's Psycho, just in case you didn't wonder. Except this is more like the later Psycho movies, like Psycho 3 or Psycho 4, or a really bad Psycho cosplay. So, yeah, not really too much to set up here. We find a little bit of a backstory about these particular characters. After Norman's dad dies, Solange, who is very, very elderly, moves in, and Melinda, played by Brandy, is expecting a child. Now, she is tired of her job basically pissing her off. She decides to kind of be a stay-at-home mom. To be fair, she is about to pop, so maternity leave was well and truly due. But nevertheless, Norman is trying to get this big lawyer job case thing, I guess. We only see him leave the house. We never actually, I think actually after we're out of the funeral home, I don't think we leave the house once. I don't think that's how cheap this goddamn movie was. It didn't even want to leave the house. Really, well, except until later on. But moving on from that, I had really no expectations for this. I thought the trailer looked kind of stupid, but I'm like, okay, Brandy's returning to acting, and A24's on board. I'm not liking the A24 and Neon Studios' respective new marketing campaigns or new foray into trying to do more mainstream stuff. And I'm not saying they shouldn't try to make money. Civil War made quite a bit of money. Love Lies Bleeding, I believe, was at least mildly successful. And A24 has had other successes. Neon Studios has had successes. Longlegs, Immaculate did pretty well. And the like. So it's good to make money because studios like this that take chances on smaller projects and projects that big studios wouldn't, they still need to make money to basically survive. Otherwise, investors, everybody are going to get upset. And that's great. This has to be one of the worst A24 offerings I've seen in fucking years. This is terrible. This is an abomination against horror, comedy, anything. There's an allegory that taking care of very elderly people that basically need all their needs catered to, like an infant, is like having an expecting an infant and everything, and knowing what you're going to have to deal with at both respective ends. That would be kind of horrifying and everything, and it would be horrifying for the person dealing with it, except for the fact that Solange is such a cartoonish bullshit character that's so over-the-top racist and ridiculous that you have no sympathy for her, you have no sympathy for Brandy, no sympathy for Norman. You don't know if Brandy's seen some of this shit, or it's just postpartum depression, or whatever the fuck's actually going on. They never bother to actually try to explain anything, any nuggets of shit that they put in, religious connotations, homage to Rosemary's Baby, or even a few things. They're just completely glossed over. This is like about 90 minutes of pure bullshit. It is really a goddamn abomination of a movie. And at first you might find a little bit of humor, but then it just grates on you. It doesn't even grate on you like, I want to see this character get their comeuppance. I just don't care. I just want the movie to fucking end. It's not funny. It's not scary. It's not in any way properly paced. I don't know what the fuck Mike and Sam Eggers were thinking. Evidently they weren't. They just basically got A24 to get on board and do their shit. So yeah, that's pretty... Bravo to them. They got a movie released in theaters. I've seen movies on streaming that were probably made for far less money. They could have gotten a theatrical release that would have deserved a theatrical release over this bullshit. This is the return to acting for Brandy. Apparently we are going to get new I Know What You Did Last Summer at some point, and it can't be any worse than this. It really can't. It really can't. It can't be worse than this. This isn't even the worst movie of the year. That's the really sad thing. That is the sad state of movies this year. There have been some that have been titanically disappointing. I talked about Beetlejuice, and you can check out that review if you want. That was pretty disappointing. There are movies that could have actually been, pretty good with the right tone, and this is so tonally inconsistent, and it also arrives at an ending where it's like, okay, that's it? That's it? I mean, again, The Lighthouse. I recognize that The Lighthouse wasn't for everybody, but I thought it was pretty goddamn good overall. I don't know what the mermaid fucking was about, but nevertheless. That being, why couldn't she have been like the other mermaid with the fish part on top and the lady part on the bottom? If you have seen The Lighthouse, you get what I'm talking about. If you don't, you are mind-numbingly confused. But, yeah, I'm sorry. Catherine Hunter, just sounds like Meatwad. She just sounds like Meatwad here. And once you hear that, you will never unhear it. And, yeah, it is so fucking minimalist. It is so ridiculous. And just any of the supernatural or psychologically damaging elements that could have worked are just totally tossed out the window. And it's stupid and basic. And really, it just arrives at anywhere like, okay, cool. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers. That's really all I have to say right there. So, Norman talks about the fact he had a bad relationship with his stepmother, how she treated him. His dad died. And Solange offers basically to pay off every single thing they have. Now, I didn't reveal that in the first part because you might be thinking, well, how the fuck would they put up with all this bullshit? And at first, Belinda is very gracious because she's like, she's your stepmother. She doesn't seem all that bad. Let's take care of her. And then it becomes obvious that Solange is trying to drive a wedge between them and also feels that the Lord speaks through her with religious stuff. And she has a religious group come in at one point after Moesha. I'm just going to say Moesha because it's funnier. Just Moesha having a kid. And there's this crazy religious stuff. Like there's this Jesus fish thing. And also Belinda used to teach stuff about how some cultures were ripped off by Christianity. and their symbolism was taken, hence the Jesus fish, all this stuff, whatever. That's a lot more interesting to talk about than anything in this movie, but I want to stay on topic. So as opposed to what I've been doing so far. Solange ends up basically making a mess of herself. So yeah, if you like gags of like old people pissing and shitting themselves, and a few fart jokes, I mean, I guess this movie would be for you, but none of it works. None of it's any good. There was one other person in the theater, and this got a pretty decent marketing campaign. Pretty decent in the sense that there were enough people at screenings that, you know, were playing this preview where it's like it got around enough. So enough people were aware this was out, and evidently nobody cared about going to see it as soon as it came out on Thursday. But she thinks the Holy Spirit flows through her. There's a lot of torturous stuff going on. Norman has to bop in and out of the house. Belinda quits her job while she's pregnant. There's racist stuff basically being thrown. Solange basically kind of convinces them not to name the kid Fern, name the kid Lori after Lawrence. You know, kind of like a tie back to family relations. There's also a Confederacy, you know, a piece of paper that Solange has because you could just tell she's the type. And sure, there might be some kind of thing. There would have been something interesting about her taking her spirit or the family spirit and putting it in Belinda's womb, but we don't get that. We just don't get that at all. They had miscarried before. And then Solange tries to use that against her. Norman is kind of then, you know, reeled back into a part of his life he tried to get away from. More shit, more piss, more ridiculous stuff. People's motivations keep changing constantly. You know, first Belinda's all on board and Norman isn't, and then they switch around and it's inconsistently bad. Really, really bad. And then after Belinda has the kid, there's this point where this, you know, basically a deal was made between Norman and Solange to replace a lot of the furniture with a lot of the old furniture. Like, she's trying to take over their life. And also, this religious group does this weird Rosemary's Baby, like, you know, cult religious thing over her, you know, womb, coddling the kid and stuff like that. And there's weird body horror imagery, like with Solange having 6 tits. So if you want to see an old lady with 6 tits on her, this is the movie for you, and you need to be on the watch list. And then there's even a part where, you know, Belinda, I think, seemingly imagines Norman nursing his very old mother. The kid's also super goddamn annoying, by the way, and I know infants cry, but that's why I don't have children. So you got... And then also Solange tries to beat herself up to make it look like Belinda's doing this, but she can't convince Norman enough that this is happening. See, nothing really gets built up upon. And then the pastor shows up a couple times, tries to explain about all this, that Solange actually does have this spiritual power and everything. And then it gets to the point where now you keep the Jesus fish, you can tear up that Declaration of Confederacy. So the Jesus fish thing now controls the kid, basically, and the kid doesn't cry when the Jesus fish is over it, and then cries when it's not. But then the Confederacy thing's ripped up. But then the mother's finally riding away. Like, really, like, this just all happens. The mother's finally riding away and ends up basically dying. They cremate her. They're moving out of the house. And then we smash cut, and we see that Belinda finally just smothered her with a goddamn pillow. I would really like to know what the fuck everybody was thinking when they made this, because this is barely a movie, it's barely a concept. I just had to rip on a lot of this shit. I could appreciate it as camp if it actually was entertaining, but it wasn't. This was pretty goddamn trash-filled. It was just a landfill of stupid. Yeah, really bad. F. It gets an F. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm Charles Rentlin. I'll see you soon.